Hello and welcome back to another update as we cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Israeli-Palestinian war. We start out in the southwest of Gaza City, where we see that the Israeli forces have managed to advance in two different directions. First off, we have the southwestern parts of the city, where the Israeli forces managed to advance in a northeastern direction towards the central part of the Gaza City, where the Israeli forces managed to get very close to the center of Gaza City. We're seeing that the center of the city is located right here. Despite that, the Israeli forces have managed to advance much quicker than anyone has really anticipated towards the center of the city. This raises the question, how come they are able to advance this quickly? My analysis tells me that the Israeli forces are likely advancing at a quick pace, thinking that the Palestinian forces are currently engaging in guerrilla tactics, where they try to ambush the Israeli forces, and the longer time they spend within the city, the more opportunities the Palestinians get to ambush these forces. Therefore, they are looking to quickly end this battle, and the way they're doing it so far seems to be that they want to close off the southwestern section and then move through the city section by section, reaching the center of the city. So what we'll likely see is that the Israeli forces will look to close off this southwestern part of Gaza City, then move on to the northwestern parts of the city, the southeastern parts, and then the northeastern parts of the city. Then they will move on to the Jabalia area, which they have largely left untouched. They entered it at the start of the battle, but have since left it alone. So what we're seeing is that they'll likely go for Gaza City first, and then move northwards, trying to squeeze out the fighters in this direction. If they manage to cut off the tunnels in the southern parts, which are located within Gaza City, and you'll be able to cut off the Hamas fighters in the northern parts in Jabalia camp, the Beit Lahia area, and the Beit Hanun area. And talking about the Beit Hanun area, we see here that the Israeli forces managed to advance further in a southwestern direction, capturing more of the areas. So with this, we actually see that they have captured the majority of Beit Hanun, and they are likely to continue their fighting in the northern parts to pressure the Hamas fighters from these areas and towards the Jabalia camp. It seems that the Jabalia camp is the area in which the Israeli forces want to end the Hamas presence in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. And after that, according to Israeli officials, they want to go to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip and completely occupy the Gaza Strip. The reason for this is that they are looking to completely get rid of Hamas, and they cannot do that without completely occupying the Gaza Strip. This raises the question, what will they do with the 2 million civilians in the southern part of the Gaza Strip? It'll be much more difficult to fight anyone in such a dense area. Gaza City itself is the size of Bakhmut, what had a population of 1 million, and now we're seeing the southern parts, which are much larger than Gaza City itself, but it will have to hold 2 million people, and most of them will be located in the residential areas. So unless they move them somewhere else, it will be very difficult to conduct any fighting in these areas due to the high population density. And back to the Israeli advances, we see that based on these advances that the Israeli forces are moving quickly. But if the Hamas fighters were really fighting against them, then it shouldn't be possible even if they wanted to. That raises the question, how is Hamas fighting? And looking back at the previous videos, and now the new videos which were released earlier today, we have this compilation released by Hamas where we see multiple tanks being hit. The first one is a Hamas fighter who takes one of these RPG heads and then puts it on a tank. After that, he runs away and his comrade comes and shoots at the tank. Then we have this next video which shows a Hamas fighter inside a apartment shooting down at a tank. Then we have this third video, which is yet another Hamas fighter shooting at a tank from a much longer distance than what we've seen the other times. We have another one where we see two Israeli tanks within the area of a street, and then a Hamas fighter comes up from behind them and shoots at one of them. The behind of an Israeli tank is the most vulnerable, as it is with any other tank. We have this yet another video which shows Hamas fighting moving up to the back of an Israeli tank and shooting it from behind. Then we have this yet another video which shows Hamas fighting walking up to the front of a tank and shooting at it. Then you may raise the question, how are they shooting from the front of the tank? Shouldn't they get spotted? That is because the visibility of these tanks are very poor. This is why, unless the Israeli forces send infantry together with the tanks at the front lines, they'll have a very difficult time dealing with the Hamas fighters, as they have a very low rate of actually seeing these fighters before they shoot their shot. We then move on to this next video, which is yet again another video of a Hamas fighter holding an RPG shooting at Israeli tanks. This one looks like it is from behind as well. The behind of the tank is very vulnerable, and therefore whenever they get hit, it is very likely that they get penetrated, and therefore they will likely get destroyed or at the very least damaged, with the risk of hitting the infantry as well. But from the videos you've seen so far, the infantry within the tankers usually survive these hits, but the tank itself usually gets damaged or immobilized at the very least. Therefore, they are losing a lot of tanks, but not that much soldiers in these battles. But this is why we're not seeing the Israeli fighters just steamrolling everything, but they're still advancing very quickly, and that is because Hamas cannot establish a front line. They cannot do that. What they're doing instead is that they're doing these ambushes and running away. They want to avoid fighting as much as possible and just hit the Israelis whenever they get the chance. That is the current fighting that they're taking, and that is why we're seeing the Israelis advance a lot quicker than most expected, and that is because we are used to frontline fighting where they are taking every day with heavy casualties, but we're not really seeing that heavy casualties combined to the size of this battle. It is a huge battle. The Israeli forces have over 100,000 troops involved in this battle, while Hamas fighters have anywhere between 10 to 50,000 depending on mobilization and many other things. But essentially what we're seeing is that there's a lot of soldiers but not a lot of casualties, and the main reason for that is that the fighting is not frontline fighting, it's not direct combat, it is mostly just these RPG battles against Israeli tanks where the infantry usually survives. But this also means that what we'll likely see is that the Israeli tanks will go through Gaza, sweep it off, and then infantry will follow behind those tanks at a reasonable distance. These infantry will then sweep up building by building. This means that it will require a lot of manpower, which Israel has a lot of. So what we will see is that the Israeli forces will likely go through all of Gaza City and clear it up with their infantry. This will take a very long time, despite the territory they've captured or they've actually swept through is much smaller. So with that, we'll see that the northern part of the Gaza Strip will likely take much more time before the fighting ends completely, while the Israeli forces look like they will likely take control of it. But at the same time, this means that while these tanks drive through, they lose a lot of these tanks. And after that, the Israeli forces will likely cause a lot of casualties among the Hamas fighters. However, most will still survive due to the lack of infantry to sweep the houses. This means that the Hamas fighters will likely use the tunnels to go to the southern parts before the Israeli forces close in on them, the infantry mainly, and therefore a lot will survive. And with a lot surviving, that means that when the Israeli forces go to fight in the southern parts, they will have a lot more infantry to fight there. The reason for this is the deeper you go into a urban area, the more difficult it becomes to fight them, especially if they are in large numbers. So the optimal outcome for Israel is to quickly get rid of Gaza, but at the same time cause as many casualties as possible among the Hamas fighters. While the best outcome for the Hamas fighters is to slow down it as much as possible and have as many as possible survive to fight another day in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. So with all of this, we can say that the northern parts of the Gaza City, although it is the most dense urban area, it is the most fortified area and all of these things, it will likely not be where the main fighting takes place. The main fighting will likely take place in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. It will likely be much more gruesome than what we see here in the northern parts. So with all of that in mind, we are only seeing the start of the war. Despite it having ongoing for now a month and 12 days, we now see that it will likely last for many more months to come, and therefore we are going to strap in to follow this conflict. So check me out every day when I upload the newest update, whether it be here in Israel and Palestine or in the Russo-Ukrainian war. And thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a great day, and see you all next time.